Hi, my name is Dan Marchek, and I'm one of the co-founders of Science Cafe New Hampshire. I'm just curious, how many people have not been to a Science Cafe before? Ooh, wow. Wow. How many of you heard about it in the newspaper? All right, there you go, David. We're glad to see that. So Science Cafe was started by David, Sarah Eck, and myself with the intent of having a place where people could come together and talk about a topic from a perspective of science. So we bring experts together with the public, and we try and educate New Hampshire and create a stronger society by sharing information together. What will happen here is it's largely a conversation. It's a question and answer. We'll give our panelists a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it over to questions from you. So David Brooks, our moderator, and I will have microphones. Since we are recording this for Concord TV, please wait for a microphone, raise your hand, and we will come to you and get your question. So without further ado, I'll introduce our moderator, David Brooks.
All right, thank you very much for coming, and it's really nice to see. It's really nice to see so many newbies come to this. Let's see, Dan actually stepped on all my lines. Concord TV's recording it. The line I always have, regulars have heard this before, this is a very difficult venue for the wait staff because of the way the tables are, and we all come and leave at the same time, so tip generously. They give us the room for free. Otherwise, let's see, next month's topic will be here in Concord will be demographics, the silver tsunami, talking about how and why so many people in New Hampshire look like me. And then the month after that, we'll be talking about composting. I've just, those... It's a more subject, that's right. It's sort of like the next stage, you know? And Nashua, I believe next month is talking about robotics. If you got engineer buddies, they want to go down to that. So, I think that's about it. So, our two panelists, our third panelist, unfortunately got sick at the last minute, so they're going to have to carry the load. So, we have Wayne Castro, who's a mental health counselor at Riverbend. What's the Riverbend Counseling, which is right. I'm not sure which direction from here. So, and Meghan Butcher, who's a psychology doctoral practicum student with Concord Family Practice? Family Healthcare. All right, anyway. So what, and I'm going to do the usual routine, which is I'll give each one of them about 3 minutes to tell us why we should pay any attention to them whatsoever. And then I will ask the first question, and after that, it is up to you guys. And if you don't ask anything, we'll sit here in awkward silence for an hour and a half. So, so make sure you do. So, you have a microphone here that you guys share, so don't fight over it. Hold the button in. That should be good. Is it red light or green? There it is.
Green.
And also, when I bring the microphone to you, and this applies to you guys too as well, as Dan's line is, pretend it's an ice cream cone, so it needs to be closer to your mouth than you think it should be in order to be heard properly. So, please tell us why we should pay any attention to you.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of how to fill 3 minutes to convince you why to listen to me.
It doesn't have to be 3 minutes.
So I guess I think that it's really important to be able to talk about mental health and to talk about the different stigmas and the different questions that the general population has, and what better place to do that than a bar. So I guess that might be a reason to listen to me. I think it's an exciting topic, which is kind of funny since it's about depression. So I think that, besides that, it's because I have the microphone, I guess. Other reasons. So I am in my 4th year of my doctoral training to get my PsyD in clinical psychology, and I'm, like I said, just really passionate about the field. So if I haven't convinced you yet, then we'll see if I can.
All right.
Okay, this is a very timely topic, and this is a good place for it. Northern New Hampshire has a higher incidence of seasonal affective than, say, where I came from in New York City even. The difference is noticeable. I've worked down there as well as up here, and I never encountered the problem down there as much as I do up here in my clientele. And let me say for the record, even though I'm from New York, I am not, nor have I ever been a Yankees fan. Go Red Sox. So yeah, that being said, I've worked in community mental health for about 37 years, 22 of them down in New York, 15 up here with Riverbend, in a variety of settings and capacities. So I hope that gives me some credibility.
Thought I went first.
All right. So let's start out with the obvious definition. So well, you have the microphone, so why don't you start? What is seasonal affective disorder? And what isn't it?
Okay. Well, seasonal affective disorder is more of a kind of common name for what is actually a variant of major depressive disorder. Diagnostically, you would diagnose it as major depressive disorder, recurrent, seasonal type, seasonal variant. It has many features in common with major depression. Feeling sad most of the day, more days than not, loss of interest in things you formerly found pleasurable, insomnia or alternatively hypersomnia, that is sleeping more than you really need to. Unfortunately, in some individuals, thoughts of suicide. But seasonal affective is different in certain critical ways. First of all, it has a definite seasonal pattern. In order to make the diagnosis, you have to see a pattern of depression during the winter months that resolves in the spring and does not occur at any other time for at least 2 years running. In seasonal depression, what is more marked than in year-round typical major depression is a sense of fatigue, a sense of lethargy. And there are reasons for this that we can perhaps talk about a little later. Whereas major depressive disorder, recurrent, without the seasonal specifier, is more often characterized by loss of appetite. Seasonal affective disorder can be characterized by cravings for carbohydrates and overeating carbohydrates.
Another reason that this is an appropriate venue.
And that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. All righty, it's up to you, folks. Don't be shy.
Is there any,
Wait a minute.
Oh.
I got one.
sorry,
Okay.
is there any genetic component or to it? Or is that not known?
So there can be a genetic or biological disposition for having different depressive illnesses. So major depressive disorder itself, the overarching category, if you do have a history of that in your family, you can be more at risk for developing that mental illness or that diagnosis, and then in turn having the seasonal pattern of seasonal affective disorder. Do you want to speak more to that?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, over here.
I noticed you left out something that was kind of interesting, and that was you didn't use any words called sleep apnea. Is that also part of the seasonal? You use sleep deprivation or sleep extension, but no sleep apnea, or how does that fit into this?
So sleep disturbance in general can be a symptom of depression. And I think specifically sleep apnea, I have not come across research that would be connecting those two things, but an increase in needing to sleep or a decrease in needing to sleep can occur. And that can be because of, and we'll probably get into it, but lack of sunlight. Your internal clock is kind of thrown off because the day is shorter. So our body's kind of like, what's going on? And we either tend to oversleep, or we either have all this energy if you have the different form of it. So no. May, do you know?
I don't know of any connection.
Connection.
See that with the-
Yeah.
All right, over here.
Good evening. Just a reflection here and a question. The main question is, I haven't heard anyone mention, well, you mentioned the days get shorter. And I'd like to leave here with a little information about light therapy. Because a little background here for myself, I spent the last 40 years in the Caribbean, where our days don't vary from winter to summer. We don't have a winter. So I came back to New Hampshire, and all of a sudden I find myself during the winter months not being able to get out of my own way. And I did a little research, and what I came up with was the purchase of a therapy light. And that made all the difference in the world, because I could control the light, I could control the intensity of the light, and I could control the duration to mimic a nice summer's day or a spring day. And boom, done. I'm through with SID. So I hope that the information helps somebody here.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'll let you speak to the light box therapy a little bit more.
Okay.
You want to hop in there?
Yes, actually, yeah, light therapy is, in my mind, kind of a first-line treatment for seasonal affective. And I've recommended it to many of my clients. Some of them came to me already using light therapy. And those that have started using light therapy after I recommended it have improved, have had a noticeable improvement.
So what do you do, just sit in front of the light for X minutes a day, or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it requires a special light. It has to be a bright, pure white light. There's been some work done with blue light alone, because the receptors in your eyes, which is where this happens, this change occurs, the receptors in your eyes are most sensitive to blue light, the relevant receptors in your retinas. But typically 20 to 30 minutes, first thing every morning, pure white light of at least 10,000 lux intensity. Now, 10,000 lux is a measure of light intensity that is a function of light output from the light box, say, and distance from your eyes. By comparison, a bright summer day is rated around 50,000 lux.
50,000?
50,000, 50,000. The therapy lights, the ones that actually work, are rated at 10,000 lux at a given distance. Because there are all sorts of therapy lights, from little tabletop to floor standing to wall panels. What's important is the distance, but any good therapy light will tell you the appropriate distance. And it doesn't have to shine in your eyes. It can be off to the side as long as it impinges on the retinas.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Oh, I'll go back to you. Over here.
Isn't the basic problem that people don't get outside enough in the wintertime? So maybe if you spent, say, 20 minutes outdoors on a sunny day in the middle of the day, that would be as good as light therapy, if not better?
When we get sunny days here in the winter,
It does happen.
Now and then, not often enough. Not often enough to offset the effects of the shorter days and the shorter gloomy days that we so often have.
So I think just to speak to that, sort of like the basic problem is that people don't get outside enough, is that there really is so few things that are basic about really any sort of mental illness or any sort of diagnosis. So there's always a really complex picture that can be taken into account in terms of all the different reasons why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. And I think that when I think about seasonal affective disorder, I do think about the fact that during the winter, all of the things that can really be protective against depression are sort of depleted. So we're less likely to go outside, for sure, and exercise, which is used a lot to help decrease depression. But we're also less likely to be able to socialize, just to get around, especially with the snowstorms. What else are we less likely to do in the winter? I had it written down, but basically, I guess, just to speak to that, is that that definitely is a factor, but it's really hard to find just a basic problem with it.
So you're saying that the wintertime can change your behavior in ways that bring on depression, as well as, external factors like the light.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the back to your right.
Are there medications that specifically deal with this?
So besides beer, so there are different antidepressant medications that have been shown to be successful in treating people with seasonal affective disorder, specifically SSRIs, which are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And one of the factors that impacts one's having seasonal affective disorder is a depletion or not having enough serotonin in our brain, which helps to regulate our mood. So by taking an SSRI or an antidepressant, it can block the serotonin from being kind of sucked away in our brain and allow us to have more of it. But in terms of other medications or whether that would be appropriate or not for a patient really depends on the individual needs of the person and the rest of their medical history and the way that they're presenting with their symptoms.
Yeah, another, not a medication, but a supplement that has been linked to seasonal affective disorder is vitamin D3, which physicians have commented is chronic here in northern New Hampshire, especially during the winter, in northern New England, rather. And so you might talk to your doctor about a D3 supplement. They're readily available over the counter or by prescription, depending on the potency your doctor feels you might need. So that's another consideration that has been has relevance to dealing with winter depression, seasonal depression.
All right, I have a question over here.
What is the normal or average time of the year of onset of seasonal affective disorder? And then on the other end, at what point does one begin to recover from it? And is that a tapering off process?
I've had clients who feel it coming on as early as October and will start their treatment in October, whether it's light therapy, medications, or both. And it seems to be, in my experience again, with my clients that suffer from it, a sort of gradual onset. They feel it coming on, but it doesn't really reach full stride until maybe December. And same with the resolution. It's, kind of a tapering off. But again, in speaking from experience, it seems to be a more rapid tapering off than the onset.
Follow-up, is there any demonstrable link with the change from standard time to daylight savings time, or from daylight savings time to standard time?
Anything on that one?
So I can't say any specific research to the link, but I think that speaks back to research that has found that the change in amount of hours of sunlight that one can experience or is exposed to can cause an increase in symptoms of it. So I think that sounds like a really interesting topic to research, and I will do it. But to answer that, I think that likely there could be, yes, maybe.
Okay, and by the way, you know there's a bill before the House that would move us to the Atlantic time zone if Massachusetts does it first, and in the process get rid of the time switch, and Maine as well. Yeah, so maybe if this went through and then we saw the sudden, you could analyze SAD in the state before and after it. It'd be awesome. You'd win awards. All right, I have a question here.
I did not know that about the time zone change. That's interesting. When looking at light therapy, is there any difference in the full spectrum versus just white lights? What should one look for to get it besides the amount of light?
You know,
Okay, the light has, previously the light had to be bright, full spectrum white light. Again, there's been some research with a very narrow band blue light. It does seem to have an impact on seasonal affective disorder. All the votes aren't in yet as to whether it has any advantage over the pure white light. Most of the light boxes that are in use and are marketed are fluorescents. There has been some work done with the LEDs for the blue light. Again, not all the evidence is in as to whether the blue light is as effective or perhaps even more effective than the white light for seasonal affective.
Okay, I have a question on your far right.
I really have two questions at the moment, just because you brought up the blue light. There has been some press that I've read that watching a computer, watching an iPad, something like that, just before you go to bed, emanates blue light, which is disruptive to the sleep pattern. But could you comment on that? But really my question is, you're right, this vitamin D is available over the counter, as are so many other supplements, and there's a lot of press about what is effective. These over-the-counter supplements are not regulated as are prescription drugs. So how does the consumer make a choice as to what manufacturer is good? If I go and I buy some vitamin D and I don't improve, I'm going to say, oh, this vitamin D didn't help me. But maybe it was a bad product. How can we know what products are good?
So I can speak to the first part a little bit of your question about the blue light and the research that's come out that said, you know, looking at your cell phone or being on your computer before bed, the light that's being emitted can impact your ability to fall asleep, to stay asleep. And in that sense, I think that there's, again, a lot of other factors in that research that is playing in to the impacts on sleep. So a lot of times people will be on their cell phones looking at social media or watching videos or on their computer, and their mind will be racing and thinking of a lot of other things that are going on, which will add to the difficulty falling asleep and disturbing the sleep. In using light therapy, I don't know too much about light therapy or the science behind it, but I do know that there probably wouldn't be other media or things going on within the light box. So, I mean, I don't think. That would just be a computer, I guess, or a laptop, so.
Well, that's precisely why you use the light box first thing in the morning, because you want to suppress that melatonin overproduction that is characteristic of seasonal affective disorder. You want to suppress that so you can be awake and alert through the day. You do it just before bed, it's having the same effect, only it's when you don't want it.
So the second part of your question, the big part of the question, in terms of supplements and knowing if the supplement that you bought over the counter is working or not working, I don't know the research behind that, but I do know that sometimes, whether it's over the counter supplements or medication, the effect that it's going to have on you might not mean whether or not it's a good batch or a bad batch, but it's the other impacting factors that are going on in your behaviors or in your life that could be having a bigger effect on it.
All right, well, if we're about done, then please join me in thanking our panelists. And our moderator, David Brooks. And as David said, next month we'll be covering demographics in the silver tsunami here in Concord. And on March 1st in Nashville, we'll be touching on robotics. So we'll have a session on robotics down there. Hope to see you next month. Thanks for coming.